I am Dr. Heather Moore, owner of Total Performance Physical Therapy. Tonight we are going to go over the topic that makes me probably one of the most hated people ever. It's, are flip-flops bad for you? The answer is yes they are. And I take them away from a lot of people. So tonight I'm going to have Lauren demonstrate why. And yes, they make all sorts of flip-flops that are, some have arch support, some don't. So we're going to kind of talk about why flip-flops are generally not good for you. Now, just like with everything else in life, everything in moderation. So if you're going to the beach and you just want to throw on a pair of flip-flops, go ahead. If you are dealing with back pain, if you're dealing with hip pain, if you're dealing with knee pain, if you're dealing with foot pain, do not put on a pair of flip-flops. They're going to make things a lot worse. All right? So if you just do it every once in a while, you know, don't put on a pair of flip-flops and go walk around Disney World. It's not going to work. I promise you, you are going to develop some sort of issue. I know, I've done it. So just remember that flip-flops offer no support. I don't care if they are the ortho heels. I don't care what kind of flip-flop they are. After a period of time, they are not good for you. So if you buy a higher-end flip-flop, like an ortho heel that does have an arch support, they are much better for you. They are still not meant to be walked in for a long period of time. So if you're going up and down the boardwalk, you know, and you know you're going to be walking a couple miles, throw on your sneakers. I know, very not glamorous, but they're going to help your knees, your back, your hips, all those things, even your neck. So why are flip-flops bad for you? It's basically walking in bare feet. And I know there's a barefoot, 5 feet, 5 finger, I don't even know what they were, contingent, which a lot of people got their money back on because they didn't really do what they said. So if you have a pair and you haven't gotten your money back, they did actually lose a lawsuit. So when you have on a pair of flip-flops, and Lauren actually has pretty good feet, okay? So if we look at Lauren's foot right now, we're going to see that everything, except for a little bit of her knees going back, everything's in pretty good alignment, okay? So her knees, her hips, her back, her stomach, all of it is straight, okay? So when she takes a step forward, the force is just going to go right up into her, up and through her skull, all right? Now, Lauren's standing like this because she knows she has to. Most people's feet do not look like this. Guaranteed, your feet do not look like this. Most people either have a very high arch or a very low arch. There are very few people that have a neutral foot. Even when you have a neutral foot and you start walking in flip-flops, there's no shock absorption. So all of the weight that you are putting through your foot has to be absorbed somewhere. So it's going to be absorbed at your ankle, at your knee, at your hip, up your back, up your neck, through your head until it goes out the top of your head. All right, so since Lauren is our model and knows exactly how to stand, let's say Lauren goes flat foot. So Lauren's going to go flat foot. Notice what happens. And this is exactly what happens when we lose the arch in our shoe. Okay? Her foot goes down. Her knees have now turned in. It's a little bit hard to see with the pants, but her knees have turned in, and they actually have lost space. So now you're starting to walk with your knees together. So when your knees come together, your hips start to go in. This is not anything that you know is occurring, but the minute you take your shoes off and you put on flip-flops or you go barefoot, this is exactly what happens. This is why sneakers cost so much, because of all the research behind them. So now your hips are going in. So what happens with your back? Your back has to rotate. Your back muscles have to shift in order to compensate for all of that inward collapsing that is occurring. So when you walk and you have a pair of flip-flops on, it's only going to make your foot go flat. So your arch has no support, all right? So if you have a flat foot, and most people have more of a flat foot than not, and if you want to do a really quick and dirty test, which is not anywhere near medically sound, but it will show you if you have a flat foot, put water on your foot and walk along with cement and see, do you have a arch? Does your foot look like this? Like a little happy, like whoop, with your little toes there? Or does it look like this? Flat foot, high arch. Now, some people are like, okay, I got a high arch, doesn't apply to me. So, yeah, it does. Because what happens is, so when you are in a flip-flop, so here's our little flip-flop, and here's your little foot that has this high, well, that's not a very high arch. We're gonna exaggerate because that's what we do here. So here's your high arch. Now, instead of being in a sneaker or a supportive footwear that'll actually help you because you've gone to the store and you've been fitted and you got the right shoes, so you have proper footwear. So in your sneaker, when you have your, this is the sole of your sneaker, inside there is an orthotic that's built in. Some of you may even have an orthotic in there. So this is going to come up to meet your foot. So everything's copacetic. This comes up, this is all nice and padded, this is all nice and good because it's touching exactly where it needs to be. So here's your toes, and here's your heel, and now you have this high arch. So what about this space in here? Plantar fasciitis, anyone? Irritation of the bottom of the foot? Foot pain, toe pain, heel pain? When you have a high arch, and you're walking around in flip-flops, which are flat. Now, again, if you have an ortho heel, you might have a little bit of an arch. They don't provide significant arch, but you might have a little bit. There's still an entire gap to fill. So you have this whole space right now that every time you take a step, your foot goes from this to this, from this to this. So what does your plantar fascia do? So your plantar fascia, which used to be this long, every single time you step down is now this long. And then your foot comes up, and it goes back to this. And then it goes back to this. All right, so now you have this compression of your plantar fascia. But again, because you have nothing to support your high arch, it's going to start to collapse on that flip-flop, on that bare foot. So now what's going to happen is all of that inward turning that we talked about, all of that collapse of your hips, collapse of your knees, collapse of your low back, eventually collapse of your core, collapse of your upper body. It's all connected. That's all going to happen when you have a high arch. Now, have you ever seen somebody who walks with flip-flops who kind of has a duck foot out to try and compensate for all of the stress that walking straight puts on them? A lot of people will turn their feet out. Some people will just start to walk more on their toes. Don't even get me started on platform flip-flops. Those are, I mean, they're a business owner's dream because they wind you up in here. Don't wear them ever. Okay, unless you're going to like a wedding for a couple hours, and then you can take them off. What also flip-flops don't provide, so sneakers do two things in the very rudimentary scale of things. Sneakers provide stability and shock absorption. So every time you take a step, and let's say you're running, you're putting more than double your body weight through your heel. So if you decide to like take up a jog in your flip-flops, instead of putting 150 pounds through your heel, you're putting 300, 450 pounds that your foot has to absorb. And every time you take a step, you're putting 300 to 400 to 50, 600, 700 pounds through that heel. And you are offering no support whatsoever. Go out and walk on concrete. It's just as good as a flip-flop. Just go barefoot. It's not a big deal. It is just as good as flip-flop. So now, instead of that stability being there, now you have no shock absorption. The foam padding on a reef is not shock absorption. All right? So now instead of having something to minimize the force going through your body, you have nothing. Have you ever taken a step with a flip-flop and gotten like a twinge, like a sharp twinge in your ankle or your knee or your hip, and you're like, oh, what was that? That was your body absorbing the force, and it didn't do it very well. And it was letting you know, this does not feel good, okay? So when you're deciding on shoe wear, I know it's summer. I know everyone wants to wear barefoot. Everyone wants to wear flip-flops. I get it. Save it for the times when you really, really, really need it, because otherwise you're going to wind up in here with a foot injury, a back injury, a knee injury. If you are already feeling pain in your hips, backs, or knees, or foot, you should absolutely not wear any flip-flops this summer until that foot pain is resolved, okay? So overall, all in all, flip-flops are bad for you. Birkenstocks, ortho heels, they all go in the same boat. They are all bad for you. Now, one of the things that you can do is to help your feet after you wear flip-flops is you can stretch the bottom of your foot. So all you're going to do is just come up on the ball of your foot, just like Lauren is, and she got all these nice little cracks, and you're just going to stretch out the bottom of your foot. Okay, you're going to feel a nice stretch, go as far as you can. That'll help loosen up the plantar fascia on the bottom of the foot. That'll help loosen up some of the muscles on the bottom of the foot. It's not going to fix anything if you just walked 8 hours in flip-flops, but it'll kind of help, I guess. There's a little trick that you can do while you're standing in the sand. If your feet are cramping, you can always just take off your shoe and then bend your, come up on the ball of your foot and stretch the bottom of that foot out. Don't stretch it to pain, only stretch it to where you feel a nice stretch. If you have any questions on your footwear, footwear is a major issue for people. It's one thing that people really don't like talking to me about, but they have to, especially if they're in pain.